Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Reservoir's online service. It is so good to be with you this Sunday, October 13th, here in Cambridge. It is a chilly fall morning. I think it was 42 degrees when I got into my car this morning. Don't know what it's like from wherever you might be logging in from. So feel free to start chatting in the chat if you can. Say hi to one another. Let us know what's the weather like or anything else you'd like us to know. Hey, I'm Ivy. I'm a pastor here. I use she, her pronouns. It's really, really good to be with you this morning. I'm going to walk us through a couple of announcements before I turn it over to the band this morning. I also want you to know that we welcome everyone without exception to discover the love of God, the gift of community, and the joy of living from exactly where you are at. And we hope that that realness, that genuineness of experience actually unfolds into your week, into the days ahead in meaningful ways. The first of the announcements that we often hit is our connection form. You can find the link to that in the description here on YouTube. And it's just a great way for you to let us know that you're curious to hear a little bit more of how to get connected at Reservoir, or maybe you're just ready to connect a little bit more. Either way, it gives you the opportunity to let us know that. Maybe it's to volunteer, maybe it's to join a community group. We have 25 or so of those going right now. Some of them are online. So if you're interested, reach out to me, Ivy, at reservoirchurch.org. And you can also let us know if you'd like to be on the newsletter. We put out a weekly newsletter, gives you highlights, updates on blog posts that we might have, and just general information of things going on in and around Reservoir. So you can check that off with interest too, or email info@reservoirchurch.org. Just seeing if anyone's chatting in, saying hello. We have 6 people in the studio this morning, some of which you'll see, a couple you won't, but just so you know, there's more people here making this service happen this morning. By way of that, there's another opportunity for you in the next few weeks to gather as a community. If you're interested in coming in person, we're going to have a members meeting on November 3rd. Love to have you there. If you consider Reservoir to be your church, and you are excited about participating and engaging, we'd love to have you there right after service, Sunday morning, 10:45 to around noon. You get the opportunity to just be together, to share a meal together with one another, to hear updates of the church business, as well as from folks. You get to hear some stories and how people are finding connection. And it's just usually a really rich time. We try to do this 1 to 2 times a year. So this is our November chance. There'll be another one probably in February, but love to have you come. If it works for you, for your household, for your schedule, love to have you there on November 3rd, Sunday, November 3rd. All right, I think that's it for me and announcements. Let me pray for us, and then I'll pass it over to the band. Our good and loving God, we give thanks to you this morning for what we have already greeted today. Some cooler weather, but a brilliant sunrise. And we give thanks to you for the things that we do not yet know that will greet us today. And all of that, God, we give thanks for your presence that is always with us, always next to us, between us, within us, and beyond us, guiding us and guarding us. And may we feel that this morning as we engage in music and listen to the sermon and prayer. In all the ways, may we know your good existence right alongside of us in ways that are meaningful, far beyond even what we could name. In your name, amen. I'll pass it over to the band now.
Awesome. Thanks, Ivy. And hello, everybody. My name's Matt. We've got Megan on keys, Jacob on bass, Ethan playing some drums. We together invite you to join us in song, wherever you're at. Let's do it. Can I grab? This is in 1920. It's the last channel. Hey, there we go. All right. Sing, I wanna be where my feet are. I wanna breathe the life around me. I wanna listen as my heart beats right on time. I wanna be where my feet are. I chase my worries, I flee my sorrows, but what you give me is now. So take my burdens and my tomorrow. I wanna be where my feet are. I wanna be where my feet are. I wanna breathe the life around me. I wanna listen as my heart beats right on time. I wanna be where my feet are. Run to capture. I run to capture the next horizon. What you give me is here. I get no farther, and still I find you. I wanna be where my feet are. Ground below me is how you hold me. I wanna be where my feet are. The ground below me is how you hold me. I wanna be where my feet are. The ground below me is how you hold me. I wanna be where my feet are. The ground below me, that's how you hold me. I wanna be where my feet are. I wanna be where my feet are. I wanna be where my feet are. My friends, may this time of singing together minister to your heart in ways that you can both perceive and feel, and in ways that you may never. May you come to realize that God is in the midst, especially when God is not apparent. May God bless you and keep you, my friends. In Jesus' name. Let me pass it over to Steve for today's message.
Hey y'all, it's Steve here. Always so good to be with you. The other day at my local dog park, my friends and I were trading stories about like wild and reckless times in our 20s. And I was kind of sheepish when it came to me because, like, truthfully, I don't have a lot of material. So I just told them, yeah, I was pretty serious at that time of life. And one of them asked me, like, why was that? And I said, well, for one, those were the most religious years of my life. And I was pretty rigid, pretty serious, pretty judgy. That, and I'd also been somewhat depressed when I first came of age. So those were like my peak introvert years too. For me, it took a while to get back to what for me is my natural, like, extroverted self. So yeah, most of my stories from that era are like serious. They're certainly not wild and reckless. Now I can be pretty judgy toward that version of myself, sort of thinking like, what was wrong with me back then? And like, what did I miss out on? But recently I was thinking, the 20s version of me still has a few things to teach like current me these days. And some of that young adult wisdom is connected to the $1.50 Costco hot dog special. Like, do y'all know about the $1.50 Costco hot dog special? Because you should. It is the best food deal around. It's like $1.50 for the hot dog and the toppings and a big sugary drink. And like, price hasn't budged a cent since the 90s either, which I know because that's when I started having it. When we were first married, Grace and I would sometimes have these Costco dates together. I'd get the hot dog deal and share my drink with her. She'd get a chicken bake, let me have a bite, and for like under $5, we could go out to eat together. Food, 2 stars. Atmosphere, like 0 to 1 stars. But price, like, hey, 5 stars, baby. And, you know, price mattered because in the first 5 years of our marriage, neither Grace nor I ever earned more than $18,000 a year. Now, that was more than 20 years ago, but still, it wasn't a lot back then. And that was the peak. Now, there's a way to tell this story that would be sad, even like pathetic. Like, this poor couple is struggling so much financially that their idea of a date is to go out and eat the discount food specials at their Costco food court. And sure, like, it wasn't glamorous, but it also wasn't sad at all. We were good friends. We were in love, and we enjoyed going places together, even when those places were Costco. There's a proverb in the Bible that says, better a meal of greens than better a meal of greens with love than a plump calf with hate. There it is. And that was true for us. I mean, metaphorically. Our Costco meals, other than like the relish on the hot dog, were sorely lacking in vegetables. But the point holds, like, we had each other's time and attention. And we had love, and it was good. Our incomes were low, but we were getting by in our simple lives just fine. And we had enough to be generous with others. And we were really grateful when it felt like the world was generous with us. Life was abundant, and we knew that. And that felt good. And as I'll share more today, my current self really needs to keep learning this from myself half a lifetime ago, that scarcity can be a physical reality, but it can be a spiritual one too. It can be a mindset we have no business getting stuck in. But then the same is true with abundance. It can be a material thing, but abundance can be a spiritual reality too, a mindset, and it is a really good one. Friends, today we're talking about the way of Jesus with money in particular, talking about scarcity and abundance mindsets and the goodness of God to us all. So let's turn to the Gospel of Luke, where Jesus teaches on this stuff. This is one of the teachings of Jesus that is most important to me, and one that I still need to keep hearing the most. I come back to it a lot. It's from the 12th chapter of the Gospel of Luke, and it goes like this. Then Jesus said to his disciples, therefore I say to you, don't worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. There's more to life than food, and more to the body than clothing. Consider the ravens. They neither plant nor harvest, they have no silo or barn, yet God feeds them. You are worth so much more than birds. Who among you by worrying can add a single moment to your life? And if you can't do such a small thing, like, why worry about the rest? Notice how the lilies grow. They don't wear themselves out with work. They don't spin cloth. But I say to you that even Solomon in all his splendor wasn't dressed like one of these. And if God dresses grass in the field so beautifully, even though it's alive today and tomorrow's thrown into the furnace, how much more will God do for you, you people of weak faith? Don't chase after what you will eat and what you will drink. Stop worrying. All the nations of the world long for these things. Your Father knows that you need them. Instead, desire his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. Don't be afraid, little flock, because your Father delights in giving you the kingdom. Sell your possessions. Give to those in need. Make for yourselves wallets that don't wear out, a treasure in heaven that never runs out. No thief comes near there, and no moth destroys. And where your treasure is, there your heart will be too. There your heart will be too. So I've always found this teaching inspiring. I appreciate that Jesus doesn't want me to worry. I love that Jesus can call us out or call us in on our lack of faith and be so gentle about it. And I value that Jesus doesn't want a meager life for us, but better treasures. It's beautiful. But I found it confusing over the years too. Does God literally provide for all the needs of God's kids, all of them? And how do people die of starvation? This can't be literally true all the time. Or what do I do with this teaching when I live in a 21st century capitalist economy? I was taught that one thing you can do to be a good spouse and parent is save for retirement and buy life insurance, protect your family. But does Jesus think of that as faithless? As storing up treasures on earth? Kind of confusing. Now, there are some things that have helped me let go of an over-literal reading of Jesus here and take it less literally, but more seriously, and embrace a compelling, challenging, life-giving reading. One of these is realizing that Jesus was a teacher of the wisdom of nature. He was not exactly like a shaman, but not the opposite of one either. We'll come back to this in a few weeks. We sort of talk about the environment, the natural world. Another thing, though, is sort of scoping out to all of Jesus' teaching about money and getting a broader sense of what he was talking about and wrestling with that intention. Jesus, after all, talked about money a lot. My friend David Gushee, in his book on the moral teachings of Jesus, tries to summarize what seem like Jesus' big themes here. He says that Jesus is encouraging more trust and less worry. He says from this posture of trust, we can see the world properly and not develop a dark, unhealthy, or evil eye, which are metaphors for covetousness, stinginess, and greed, which at the core flow out of looking at the world in fear of not having enough. This fearfulness can flower into all kinds of evils, including hyper-competitiveness in the economic sphere, economic exploitation of others, indifference to the poor and needy, and a fixation on the acquisition of material things and a vain attempt to ensure our own security in a world that cannot be trusted. That read feels right to me. That Jesus is naming the deep source of some of our most powerful and destructive fears. How we start to live when we're convinced that there isn't enough for us. All the ways that fear can flower into stinginess and greed, covetousness, exploitation, and indifference. That feels true. My third insight I got on what Jesus might be saying here is when I got to travel to Galilee a while back. This is the region of Israel and Palestine where Jesus taught these things and where most of his disciples grew up and spent just about their whole lives. When you go to the location of the lakeside community of Capernaum, for instance, you can actually see the ruins of a first century fisherman's house. Some people call it Peter's house, as it could have been the house where the most famous student of Jesus grew up. And it's a house for sure, but not really what we'd call a house. It's like the Costco $1.50 version of a house. It gets small, a few tiny rooms. And when I stood next to it, I thought of the slum communities in India where our partner organization, ASHA, organizes the most poorest residents of that massive city for public health and community uplift. And when you walk the roads of these communities in New Delhi, you can almost reach across and touch the concrete or stone on both sides of you. And pedestrians and bicycles and mopeds share these narrow lanes, and people's homes on both sides of you. They're usually 2 or 3 tiny rooms, sort of walk-in closet, small walk-in closet size rooms where extended families of several people live. And I thought, oh wow, I should have realized this. I should have made this connection before. But Jesus and the great majority of people he ever knew, they lived this way. Peter's house looks like that, tiny homes, 2 or 3 outfits of clothes per person, simple material lives, aware of wealthy people out there, the few government and merchant elite of their age far away, but mostly just getting by day to day themselves and mostly the same as their neighbors in that regard. These were the communities in which Jesus warned about the dangers of wealth and preached this abundance mentality. The people who mainly heard him talk about trusting God for our needs and living with deep generosity, they were not mostly wealthy people or people we would even consider working or middle class. They were people we would consider to be profoundly poor materially. So yeah, Jesus didn't have life insurance or retirement savings on his mind. We're going to have to figure those things out. He had never heard of those things, the way we practice them at least. And beyond the royalty of his age and the elite Roman generals and very large land-owning elite, Jesus occasionally encountered, Jesus wouldn't have imagined the size of our homes, many of us, and the extent of our like just ordinary possessions and wealth. But still, even so, the fishers like Peter and widows and the other cast of characters he spent time with around Galilee, he taught about abundance and scarcity mindsets and the dangers that mess with our souls and our communities when we don't trust an abundant God and we don't live generously. And so I want to take a stab for a minute at like defining an abundance versus scarcity mindset. There are a lot of definitions of these things. Stephen Covey popularized these phrases decades ago, right around the time Costco was rolling out its $1.50 hot dog special. Here's though kind of my take on a definition. Abundance versus scarcity mindset is not about the pool of time or money or resources you have available. You can have either one of these mindsets, whether you're rich or poor or anywhere in between, like whether your schedule seems really flexible or busy and so on. And abundance or a scarcity mindset is a way of thinking. It's a kind of posture of the soul. And a person or a whole group of people, like a family or a company or a nation, can kind of lean one way or the other. A scarcity mindset thinks of resources as limited, like always in short supply. Time or money or whatever is hard to get. It may be running out. And if one person has more, that means someone else is going to have less. And it shows up in fear, competitiveness, resentment, greed, and other stuff like that Jesus warns against. An abundance mindset thinks of some types of resources as at least widely available, even things that can be like adapted or created. Like there's lots of time and money and energy, and maybe you run out of it in some form. Like there's only so much oil in the earth, and burning it may do a lot of harm, but hey, it turns out there's like unlimited wind, for instance. What can we do with that? An abundance mindset seems to spark cooperation, creativity, optimism, and gratitude. And you don't need to be rich or successful or privileged to have this. It sounds a little bit like what Jesus talks about when he talks about the kingdom or commonwealth of God. This cooperative, connected, joyful, more than enough for us all way of being in the world. Friends, something happened since the late 90s when Grace and I were having our less than $5 Costco dates. We have more resources now. We never got rich, at least by greater Boston standards, but we make more money. We have more stuff. We can go out to eat sometimes and not eat hot dogs if we don't want to. We're more successful than we were then. Here in middle age, we have so much more by almost any measure compared to our young adult selves. But still, at least for me, I default much more to scarcity mindset than I used to. I've had times the past few years when I've been stressed out about money like I hadn't been in a long time, where it seemed like there just wasn't going to be enough of that, and where there also wasn't enough time in the week to even meet my minimum goals or fulfill my responsibilities. Where when I stop at the end of the day to like check in on what I found life-giving or life-sucking, as my faith has taught me to do, I think much more easily of the resentments and frustrations and disappointments than I do of the great fullness of my life and my world. I think in America, that's actually the temptation, the path of midlife, of what happens to you as you get older. I find this ironic and discouraging. And it brings me back to Jesus' wisdom for a full life, for a good life. And I really want to learn this from Jesus again. I really want to learn this even from my younger self again. To wonder, how can my soul, my mindset, my heart, whatever you want to call it, be hopeful and optimistic in a good God and a good world where there's more than enough for me and for my loved ones and my descendants. Friends, as I relearn this stuff, I've noticed 3 aspects to this mindset and like 5 simple actions, mostly simple actions we can take that help us live in the grace of God's abundance for us all. So let me end with those, the 3 principles. One is abundance mindset asks us to be more communal and less individual. Jesus is like, look at the ravens and the lilies. Things work in the natural world, mostly not because any creature has this superpower to take care of its own needs by itself, but because creatures are working together. And same with us, thinking every household needs to independently secure all of its own needs, like food, possessions, childcare, good advice, wisdom, everything. It's kind of crazy making. Like, why on my urban block of something like 50 households do we own 50 shovels that we all use like 5 to 10 times a year? Like, we could share. Why do I think that my wife and I are going to have all the advice and insights that our kids need? I am not that wise and smart. But amongst our hundreds of friends and family members and neighbors and people in our church community, hundreds of you all, like, we probably have way more than my kids will ever need. Communal more than individualistic. 2, controlled versus open. Jesus says God knows what you need. And it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Give it all to you. And that works, but I'm going to need a lot of openness to the difference between all my wants and all my needs, or even the difference in how I think my needs will get met and how they will get met. When I'm a guest in someone's home, there are a ton of benefits. I don't need to cook or buy food or clean. It's the best, but I lose control too. I don't get to set the menu or just how the food is cooked or seasoned. But if I can roll with my host's style on those things, I can walk away well-fed, happy, and grateful. Thanks be to God. Well, so it is with the world. We don't really own anything. We're guests in God's world, aren't we? So maybe I want a spouse and I don't get one, but I get 2 or 3 great best friends. Or maybe I wish I could drop $100 in a fancy meal, but instead I can learn how to cook that meal for really cheap. Not the same thing, but still pathways to abundance. And 3, fear versus faith, or ingratitude versus gratitude. Jesus taught that a lot of time when we're afraid, we can ask God, like, who or what can I trust? That faith is a powerful way through our fears. And he also taught that when we're frustrated or resentful about what we don't have, we can try to pay attention to the much that we do have or can have. That gratitude and ingratitude aren't just about our material state, but about our mindset and our prayers and our attention. Now, friends, I found at least 5 things in the teaching of Jesus, or like in the wisdom of life, that help us keep finding our way toward this more communal, more open, more faithful, more grateful way of Jesus. So I want to end by sharing these. And I'm not trying to put like a burden on anyone. What I want to invite you to do is pay attention to, like, which of these do you feel like you're already living and is that working out well for you? Which maybe 1 or 2 of these sort of grab you most as something that you want to lean into more, and see if you can run with it in the days to come. Okay? So 5 things, but pay attention to what catches your ear, what compels you. Here they are. 1, in all the ways you can, call the lies out on the people and systems that are using us. For 4 generations now, American corporations have been training the whole freaking world to have a scarcity mindset. So we will buy and consume and more and more and more. Like, your water is not good enough. You need Coca-Cola to quench your thirst. Like, call bull on all that. Talk back to the endless stream of ads and politicians and neighbors and inner voices that endlessly train us to want and to covet. Our politicians have picked up on this game. Fear and resentment gain loyal, passionate voters. But it is all so toxic to our souls and our environment and our relationships with ourselves and our neighbors. Jesus modeled this with like a little shade that he threw at the most opulent building in his country, the Jerusalem temple. He says even Solomon can't match the beauty of the wildflowers. Even Solomon, meaning the richest person Jesus and his friends had ever imagined. And even Solomon, like an indirect way of referring to his nation's palaces or temples, like, it's a joke. It can't compare with the simple, extravagant beauty of what's growing on the ground for free. I think Jesus would want us all to try to redefine what is, and keep redefining what is normal and sufficient for a flourishing, joyful life. So if you dig in on this, it'll get you swimming upstream in our generation, but it will set you free too. Secondly, give. Like, give of your time and give of your money. Not so much that it runs you into the ground, but enough so that it costs you. There was an ancient biblical practice of the tithe, which means the 10th, of giving 10% of your harvest to God in the form of supporting the temple, supporting the poorest residents of your community and its shared spiritual life. I don't think that's a rigid, command on us that we must give exactly 10% of our incomes, gross or net, to the church or to a variety of charities. But dang, I think it's a great benchmark to start with. I wouldn't ask you to consider, I hadn't been trying this for decades, America, for all our struggles with inflation and poverty rates and ridiculous cost of housing and income inequality, still America's like a relatively wealthy nation. Yet the average American household gives 2% of its income to charity. And just over half of Americans give nothing in a given year. This is a whole nation running a scarcity mindset. I'm so grateful that both my wife and me, as like baby followers of Jesus, at 17 years old, we separately made lifelong commitments to tithe off our income, to every year give a minimum of 10% of our earnings outside ourselves to God's work in the world. Not because we were like especially faithful or whatever, but we're kind of taught like this is a good idea if you want to live a generous, abundant life. And we're like, sounds good, I'll do it. And so for decades, we've started with about 10% to our local church, and then we've given on top of that as much as we can to other people and places we care about. And sometimes, friends, it's just how easy and natural. And sometimes we've stopped and felt like maybe this is hard, but it's been a pre-made decision of faith that brought order to our financial lives and brought an abundance mindset to us, whether we feel like we've been making a lot or a little. We sort of set our giving and then we figure out like, how do we make the rest of our resources work, trusting it will be more than enough. And that actually makes it true, like at least in our souls. Even when that's involved $5 dates, not fancy ones, it's still been so good. 3, when you have needs, ask. When you have needs, ask. This has been hard for me in my life. I'm getting a little better at it though. Ask God for what you need, like a lot, like often, don't stop. And when you're really in a jam, think about the people you can ask for help. I think this probably has implications for like how we negotiate with our employers about salary and benefits, how well we know our neighbors and talk to them, our inability to ever talk about money, most of us, with our friends and family. But ask. Jesus encourages economies of interdependence where we can give and where we can ask. 4, practice gratitude. In this crazy scarcity mindset society we live in, we probably all need a daily gratitude practice. I forget I have one, I lose it. And then every few months I realize, oh my gosh, like what is happening to my soul? And I come back to it, it saves me again. I've been there this past week. And we've preached and written about this a lot over the years at church. If you need help figuring out how to have a daily gratitude practice, talk to me or any of your pastors, or talk about it at your next community group meeting if you've got one. Gratitude, though, will change us and everything around us. And 5, like scale it up. Promote systems and cultures of more than enough in your friend groups, in your families, in your workplaces. Like do what's in your power to make it easier for other people to live with an abundance mindset instead of a scarcity one. Since really we're all in this together. We kind of owe it to our neighbor. We owe it to the world we're going to leave for the next generation to try to let this be more the way of being. Friends, I don't want to live a fantasy life. I don't want to pretend like I have more security, more money, more possessions, more anything than I do. Or like when I pray, it's all going to just magically appear. But the more powerful fantasy we all live under isn't the magic dream of the thing we'll have one day. It's the illusion that there is never enough and that we never have enough. Friends, at least for me in my house, like I want to live like that $1.50 hot dog meal is a feast, at least sometimes. I want to live like this world produces more than enough resources for us all and for the generations to come. I want to live like God cares about my needs and is encouraging ways for them to be met in time. Good ways. And I want to live like mostly I'm going to be okay. Not because it just sounds nice, but because it's good and because it's true. And because it gives me a shot at joy and fullness of life too. Could you pray with me, friends? I'd encourage you, it might help to kind of just extend your hands out where you are. Like open your hands. Open your hands. Our loving God, creator of the heavens and earth, Father and Mother to us all. as we open our hands in front of us, what do we feel? What do we see? Do we feel scarce, empty, like there's little to be grateful for, like there's not enough, like we don't have enough to thrive, let alone to give? Or God, do we feel like there's more than enough? Like our hands are full, or when they're not, the fullness will come? Do you feel like there's enough to thrive? There's enough to live generously and to give? God, to the extent that we're aware of your good and abundant world, could you empower us to keep living like that is so? To give and give and give, to practice gratitude and to empower others and to empower systems and in our workplaces and families and political communities and nations and cultures. Like, help this mindset be more reasonable and more true for us all. And God, where we feel scarce, where we feel stuck and not enough, could you help us to ask and ask and ask for our needs? Could you help us see where there's grounds to be grateful? Could you meet us in our struggle and help us find your more than enough provision for all our needs? We trust you, Jesus, to guide us in your ways that are good and full for us and for us all. Help us out however we need it, we pray. Amen. Hey, friends, with that, we end our service day, our Reservoir online. So good to be with you all. If you feel not ready to end, you'd like to spend some time in worship and in song, we got a great Spotify playlist. You search for Reservoir Church there, like all the music that we sing these days around church. If you need a little time of quiet or reflection or kind of jot down what you want to take away from this time before you go on with your day, by all means, have at that. But I'll leave you to it, and until next week, when we're back here together, I wish you the best of weeks. God's peace, goodness be with you all. Bye-bye.